Hi folks, this is Klaus of Top Hydraulics. We are really excited today because we will show you how to manually open and close the top on a BMW E93, meaning the 3 Series for model years 2007 through 2013-ish, depending on where the car was made. And it's a big deal because one, we'll show you how to manually open and close this top yourself. The open and close procedure is supposed to be a BMW dealer only procedure, and we'll demystify this. Two, we'll show you how to do this with basic tools, so you don't have to get the fancy expensive BMW special tools to do this. And three, we will go beyond the BMW procedure and actually make this top completely safe, such that it is fully locked in the front, fully locked in the rear, and it is safe to drive the car with the top down, or it is completely safe to drive the car with the top up, and that is not necessarily the case on the BMW procedure. So we're really excited and hope you have a chance to watch this for a few minutes. Let me show you the basic tools needed for this. The essential tools are a Torx T25 wrench, mostly for trim removal in the back, and then 4mm Allen wrench to relieve the pressure on the hydraulic pump hydro unit, as BMW calls it. And then we have some optional tools that you can improvise on. What we recommend getting is a 90-degree bent nose long-reached pliers, some common trim removal or upholstery removal tool, and maybe a large flat screwdriver. And we would encourage you to actuate an electric motor, for which you will need something like a 12-volt battery pack, or anywhere between 12 and 18-volt battery from an electric drill and a couple of wires. And we'll show you how to easily manipulate a little motor in this top that does the magic that is not shown in the BMW procedure. So we're really excited. Let's go at it. So I forgot to mention, it takes 2 people to move this top. It's nice to have a third person watching everything and being handy, but 2 people can totally do this after watching the video carefully. We want to start rolling down the windows, then next we'll go in the trunk to open the pressure relief valve on the pump. We have manually unlocked the trunk lid with the blade key on your key fob, meaning that slides out of your key fob. And we have also already taken the bottom trim panel out of the trunk to get access to the pump. So now let's show you how to get to the pump. There are 3 10mm hex head bolts here. I did not note the 10mm wrench as a basic tool, should have. So we've unscrewed these 3 10mm hex head bolts already. That takes the access panel off the pump. So here is the hydro unit hydraulic pump. Top Hydraulics rebuilds a lot of these. They will typically be your main reason for top failure. It could be a bad motor in the pump, it could be the pump failing internally, it could be solenoids on the pumps that go bad, or it could be the pump having to run dry. One thing you want to watch out for while you're back here already is, see this hydraulic fluid reservoir, and the fluid level in here is just above this plus sign on the reservoir. This plus sign is the minimum maximum marker for the hydraulic fluid level in the reservoir. When the top is down, you want the fluid level roughly at the top of the plus sign. When the top is up, you want the fluid level roughly at the bottom of the plus sign. If it's below that, then you seem to be having a leak somewhere and you need to find where that leak is. One common failure mode for these pumps is that they get drowned in water, and lots of things can go wrong on these pumps once they get drowned, and obviously they drown usually because there's a failure somewhere in the weather stripping above letting water into the trunk. Anyway, now let's get to the pressure relief. The pressure relief valve is here, this brass colored 4mm Allen bolt. So let's put our 4mm Allen wrench in here, and we will turn it counterclockwise 1 turn. Pressure has been relieved enough to manually move the top now. We need to remove the trim piece on top of the interior quarter panel on both the passenger and driver side. We'll show you the passenger side because it's easy to see from the camera's perspective right now. We want to get our upholstery removal tool, or a flat screwdriver could do the same job. We wedge the tool behind some tabs that are behind this rubber trim piece. So we first have to get this little rubber trim off the front corner of the trim piece, and we keep wedging and turning our upholstery removal tool, trying not to break these tabs. So I made a mistake here. That's good for you to see what not to do. This tab actually slid out of the rubber boot. Well, it's not the end of the world. Now we can still pry out the tab, and we can later massage it back into this rubber trim piece. You'll figure out how to do it. You'll just help it with a small flat screwdriver, massage it back in there. I'll put it down for the time being. Next step is a T15 Torx wrench. Goes into the front portion of this windscreen holder. Here's the T15 bolt removed. Now we only need to pull up. Keep pulling up. Once we have cleared a tab in the rear that I'll show you in a moment, then this piece will pull out forward. Now the tab that we had to clear in the rear is this aluminum rivet style going back into an orange holder back here, and you can see how the tabs on the outside are locking into these pieces of sheet metal, where the plastic portion of the trim piece was just sliding down behind the quarter panel. So we pull up in the front first until this aluminum tab has cleared its rear holder. Then we wiggle, pull forward, and this trim piece comes out. Now we have an antenna over here. We need to push a tab behind this connector to get the connector out. Push our fingernail into a tab behind the connector until this connector pulls up and our trim piece is out. Here's the main part where we deviate from the factory procedure. We actually take out the rear seat bench to get access to a connector back here that we can put 12 volts onto in order to actuate the latch in the front of the top. This will allow you to latch the top when it's back up. It also allows you to now unlatch the top in its stored position. Actually, the latch in the front roof shell gets latched inside the trunk as the top is down to prevent it from rattling. And that's why BMW says if you manually lower the top, you cannot drive the car. It's unsafe because parts will rattle. That's because, as per BMW factory procedure, that top is not latched when manually lowering the top. However, we'll show you how to do it. And again, in order to do that, we get access to connector behind this rear seat bench that powers the front latch. So we fold forward the seat back upholstery portion. Then we remove this trim piece, and I'll show you how. Just a few more steps, it's not too hard. We first pull out the seat belt and wrap it around the outside of the exterior quarter panel. Then next thing, we get these upholstered corner pieces out. The way they go out is we push down at the same time as we get our hand behind it. Wiggle, push down, keep pushing down, and pull forward to pull it out. What we did here was we first freed this white piece out of this holder. Actually, sometimes the white piece will stay stuck in the holder, and I'll show you how it stays stuck. It simply stays stuck in here, so you end up pulling this piece out of this tab. Easily remove the tab from the metal holder by pinching inside and then putting it back into this trim panel, unless it goes astray as this one just did. Okay, here it is, firmly in place. And the reason we had to push down previously was we needed to create enough clearance to pull this lower part out from under the seat. And next, of course, we do the same thing on the other side. Then we get our T15 Torx wrench and we undo a total of 5 screws. One is a hidden upholstered screw back here in this little storage compartment with a net in front of it. So we take this T15 bolt out. Then we have 2 each bolts inside the anchor points for your luggage straps. T15 one here. We can let it fall down into this piece, and let me get the wrench on there properly. There we go. Second one, I'll close this plastic piece, and that contains my 2 T15 bolts. Now do the same thing on the other side. Plus we pull out this plastic trim piece and these round ones. Now you may have to massage them a little bit more than I just did, because this one has been pulled out a few times already, is a bit looser. And do the same thing on the other side. And after that, we're almost ready to take out this trim piece. We're down to a couple tabs. These are rivet style tabs. Actually, we already pulled the outer rivet style portion out of it. Once that portion is pulled out, we can easily pull the inner one, and we are practically free to pull this piece off after I've removed the same trim pieces on the other side. Plastic pieces are removed on the driver's side. Now we can pry this trim panel out. Just keep pulling. There are some tabs here that I'll show you in a moment. We really only needed to pull forward. There's one tab here, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. We pull out of those and the rear trim panel comes out. Let me put that aside. And next we'll zoom in on the connector that we wanted to get access to do this magical operation. That connector is here in the back of the top control module, and now we have it zoomed in properly. Between the 2 big connectors is one smaller one that you squeeze on the outside, pull it out. It's a simple 2-pin connector, and that's what we want to put voltage on in order to actuate the front lock to first unlock it so that the top is loose in the trunk. Then we will manually raise the top. Then we will put voltage on this connector again to lock the front. There are other ways to do this, and they are described in the BMW procedure. However, I think this is the easier, more elegant, and ultimately better way, because it lets you fully latch the top again as you put it down in the manual opening procedure. I find it very elegant. So let's show you how to operate that motor. There's a black, red and a brown wire going into this connector, and the way it works is this is a 12-volt motor that manually locks and unlocks the front section of the top. If you put positive on the red and black wire, that is the direction the motor turns to lock. If you put if you reverse the voltage, meaning you have ground on the black and red and plus 12 volt on the brown wire, that unlocks, and that's exactly what we want to do right now. Now there's several ways to put voltage on here. If you have a starter pack that has a 12 volt battery in it, you could just run a couple of small wires into here, or we actually this time have played around a little bit and use the battery from an electric drill. This is an 18 volt battery. You can go anywhere between 12 and 18 volts. This motor needs 4 to 5 amps to fully lock and unlock the latch. We've tried it with a regular small 9 volt battery. That doesn't give us enough current. So these lithium ion batteries from Electric Tools are good if you want to use one, and if you don't have a battery starter pack for your car. Or of course you could just run battery wires from your battery back here. The reason I'm hesitant to do that is these wires are pretty close to each other. If you happen to short them together accidentally while running power directly from your car's battery, that can get pretty hot and sparky. And that's also why I'm not using a starter pack right now. Starter pack is certainly fine. I'm just using the battery from a drill, and I've already hooked it up such that I know I'm reversing voltage here, such that again ground is on the black and red wire, plus is on the brown one, and it goes really fast. Once oops, there we go. Oh, it is already unlocked. I have played around with this earlier. Apologize. So let's reverse it once. That has locked. So this is the way you would normally find the latch after you've just removed the trim panel with the top down. Now to unlock, again, positive 12 volt on the ground, on the brown wire, and ground on the black and red. And just a few seconds you heard the motor unlatching. At the end, when the motor is in the fully latched or unlatched position, it will draw 15 amps, so you don't want to do that for too long. And if you use a lithium ion battery, you want to make sure that you don't short these wires. If you do that for too long, your lithium ion battery will overheat. So pick your poison. Any 12 to 18 volt source that gives you at least 5 amps of current will operate this motor. And that was the big deal. Now we have the front lock unlatched, and we can next move on to unlatching the unlatching the front of the rear module, so we can flip the trunk lid backward, and then we can manually raise the top and latch it in the front. So our task is to get 12 to 18 volts onto this 2-pin connector. Several ways to do this. If you're in a pinch and you don't have only wires, you could just run 12 volts directly from your car's battery or from the charging point up front in the engine compartment. Run 12 volts over here to this connector, and that will actuate the latch motor. Or well, I'm a little hesitant to do that because if you run wires from this powerful car battery and you accidentally short them together, they will get hot really fast if you haven't fused them. I didn't want to go through the trouble of fusing the wires and accidentally blowing a fuse, having to replace a fuse. Anyway, the one alternative is a battery pack. Well, that pulls a good amount of current too, so it's rather just a matter of convenience. If you have a 12-volt battery pack, you could just run the attach some wires to the leads on this battery pack and run them to this connector. And the other thing that I thought was really convenient that we're using today is lithium-ion battery, or another battery, a different kind of battery from electric power drill, electric power tool. When you disconnect these from your power tool, you'll see where you can somewhere shove in some wires. It's marked as plus and minus, and here we have an 18-volt battery. Don't mind the brand, it doesn't matter. That we just took off one of our power tools. Put some wires in, red for plus, black for minus. And now let's zoom in on our connector here so that I can show you how it's supposed to be hooked up. There's a black and red wire and a brown wire on this connector. If you put plus 12 volts on the black and red wire, and of course ground to the brown one, that would be the locking direction. Now we want to unlock, so we put plus 12 volts on the brown wire, and then of course ground on the other one. Stick one wire in here all the way first so they don't accidentally short, and now I'll make the quick connection and you'll hear the motor running. Takes about 5 seconds. The motor pulls up to 5 amps during the locking and unlocking action, and actually it pulls 15 amps once it has reached end of travel. You don't need a source that provides more than 5 amps of current. Anywhere between 12 and 18 volts will work just fine. So we have unlatched this latch on the front of the hardtop, and next we can unlatch the rear compartment or the rear module, flip the module back, manually raise the top and latch it. We're looking at the left side, driver's side coupling lock for the rear module, which locks down the rear module, and it also locks down the rear of the hardtop back here when the hardtop is up. What we need to do is first manually open this lock, and later when the top is up we manually close it again. Now BMW has a fancy, expensive special tool for it, part number 540161, which you don't need. Several ways to open this latch. The crude way would be just to stick a screwdriver in here and force the cylinder open. The reason I don't like it is the polished shaft on this cylinder should never get scratched up or the cylinder will start leaking. Now it's Top Hydraulics business to rebuild cylinders and make them better than new, but it's a pain to replace shafts on these. It's an unnecessary expense. So instead of using a potentially sharp screwdriver, I'll present you with two choices. One is an upholstery tool that you just stick in between the rod end clevis of the cylinder and the cylinder housing, and after you turn this cylinder to the side a little bit, you stick this in here and you lever open this latch. You don't have to lever terribly far before you can simply push a little bit more this way. The beauty of this is plastic will never scratch up and damage your expensive parts here. You want to open this latch all the way. Once it's open here, approximately 2 inches, this coupling lock is open all the way. Once we open that, on the same thing on the other side, we can lift the rear module up. Now let me show you the alternative, where we open this with the 90-degree bend nose long reach pliers. Let me first close this thing. May as well do this. So now we're going to use the 90-degree bent nose long reach pliers. We stick them, oops, we don't stick them in here. Sticking them in here is for closing the lock. For opening, we use the round side of these pliers that won't scratch up the shaft and wedge it between the cylinder housing and the rod end. And there we get this coupling over the dead center spot. Once it's over the dead center, you can almost move it by hand. Let's just help it out a little bit. Here it is, fully open. Again, this is what we need to now manually flip back the rear module and then lift out the top. Short comment, there is a plastic micro switch down here on the towards the outside of the lock, which is why I use the tool on the inside of the cylinder such that I wouldn't accidentally squash that plastic micro switch. So just a little note of caution. Okay, next we're going to show you how to flip this trunk lid back. That's where the second person comes in handy already. So the somewhat tricky part is to pry it loose. You can squeeze your fingers in here and just keep wiggling to pull it up. That's really the toughest part. Worst case, you could squeeze your upholstery removal tool in here and wedge it up. But it's not too hard. Even one person can wiggle and pull this rear module back. There's some resistance. It's got some pretty good weight to it. Now the trick is that we want to keep the rear module flipped back unless you have a third person to hold this while two other people move the top forward. You want to secure this rear module trunk lid in the flip back position, and BMW has a fancy tool, part number 540240 for that. That pretty much is a plastic sleeve that you clip onto the shaft of this cylinder. We made one, but you don't really need it. There's an easier way to do this. We made something that is 4 and 3/8 inches long that clips onto the shaft. Or the alternative is a 2x4. Cut yourself a 2x4, length 13.5 inches plus minus a half inch, meaning between 13 and 14 inches long. Or better yet, if you have a 2x2, you can just make that 14 inches long. And you want to maneuver it back here such that it rests under the ball joint of this gas strut on one end and has just enough clearance in the trunk frame that we can still lift the top out. So the rear module is flipped back. Now we're ready for the big moment of raising the top. We need a second person to raise the top for sure, because if you were to do this from one side and force it as one person, a strong person can lift the top, but they will likely bend the linkage, the frame a little bit, so much better to be two people. Now the important part is not to lift at the back of the glass, meaning the rear shell, but instead to grab the bottom of the front shell. We both lift up. Now this top weighs 250 pounds. There's a little bit of lifting to be done here, but it's not too bad. Two people can do it reasonably well. We let the top slide forward. Now it is in what's called the stacked position. Next, we don't unfold it before we take out our support in the rear and let the rear module come down. Rear module is down all the way. Now next step is the rear shell and the front shell will move pretty much simultaneously. They're linked together. So what we do is, well, on the driver's side here, I put my right hand under the middle of the rear shell, move it up, while the rear shell is moving back, the front shell is coming up, and we just both keep moving this. It actually slowly falls into place now all by itself. We push down a little bit on all coupling points, front, middle, rear, and next will be the latching of the front end of the rear latch here. The top is up. Now to latch the front, we put 12 volt positive on the black and red cable, and we'll hear the motor running. This latched the front, and it also latched the middle portions of the top. And we don't want to forget to hook this connector back up to the controller. Just plug it in. I got it in the wrong direction. Turn it around. If it fits, it clicks. There we go. And we have the front latch. We have this connector to the controller again. And last step will be latching the coupling locks here. The most elegant way to close these coupling locks is using the 90-degree bend nose long reach pliers, pushing the tip into the middle of this clevis or rod end of the locking cylinder. I push down a little bit and then we pull forward. Now this does take some muscle, and one of the tricks is to push down while pulling forward. So you ideally want to have your second party pushing down on the roof and the trunk lid a little bit while you push this forward all the way. That makes it easier to get over the dead center spot. And now we just push and pull at the same time. I cannot do that while I'm without getting into the way of the camera. So just trust me, you have to pull fairly hard until it's over the dead spot and pulled forward all the way. So here it is. The rear coupling is closed all the way. You see that this rod end is about a 1/4 inch from the end of the cylinder housing. And now our rooftop is fully closed and latched. Ta-da! So this really wasn't that difficult. It just takes a little bit of know-how, and hopefully the video has shown you exactly how to do this. 2 people can manually lock this top without much trouble. Really the hardest part was pulling on this cylinder. It just takes a little bit of muscle. If you don't have the muscle, use your brain, such as some twisted wires that you lever forward. And now your top is fully latched, safe to drive the car, and you can take care of whatever prevented the top from working in the first place, possibly the pump or a leak in the system or an electrical problem somewhere. Now, next we'll show you how to manually open the top if you ever need or want to do so. It's not normal that people have to do that, but sometimes you may need to do this in order to access components in the top when the top is not operational. Now we want to unlock, so we put plus 12 volts on the brown wire, and then of course ground on the other one. Stick one wire in here all the way first so they don't accidentally short, and now I'll make the quick connection and you'll hear the motor running. Takes about 5 seconds. Same way we've done it before. We use our 90-degree bend nose long reach pliers and lever this cylinder open a little bit. Then we can push on it and this latch is open. We do the same thing on the other side. Next, we lift the front and rear shell, meaning we stack the roof, then we flip back the module. It takes 2 people to do that. So again, we push under the rear shell and lift the front shell. They move simultaneously, they link together. Now the rear module is already unlocked. We grab it and pull back. We put our spacer in. spacer is in place. Yep. It's safe. Good. Now we lift this top and carefully drop it into the trunk. Don't get your hands pinched. This top is heavy. There we go. It's down there. And last we take out our spacer again and practically have to push this rear module down. Then we use our tool again to pull the coupling shut, and then lastly we will lock the latch either with the button in the front or with 12 volts on the connector of the control module. Here I have my tool in here and I've already pulled forward. It's a lot easier when the roof is not in the way. We just pull forward, push down and pull forward at the same time, and this latch is closed. Same on the other side. Then we apply the 12 volts or we push the button. So let's do the same thing over here. Push down and pull forward at the same time. The coupling is latched. Now I can apply 12 volts on the connector here. If the latch in the front of the front shell isn't working, then I simply put 12 volts on the connector here. The motor turns for 5 seconds and it's latched. And I take a quick look. There is no light flashing on the top control button. So our top is down. We've manually lowered the top. Woohoo!